Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of the Cosmic Force. My name is Tyler Riganti, and we have our very own Youtini crossover event tonight as we welcome the hosts of Legends Look Back and celebrate a classic crossover story. Before we get into it, let me go ahead and go around the room and introduce everybody, and we start where we always do. Emma, how are we doing tonight?
Hello, everybody. I'm doing fantastic. Really excited for this crossover and doing a lot of podcasting this week. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm ready to rock and roll.
Yes, we are too. Caleb, how are you doing tonight? I see we have 3 flags out behind you now.
I know. I'm kind of, before you know it, I'll have just an entire United Nations of flags behind me, but that's the goal. But no, I'm doing really well. I'm excited to talk about some good comics here. I think we're going to have a good long episode, so buckle yourselves in, get some snacks. We're going to be here for quite a while, I think.
Yes, it will be a very fun episode. Jacob, let's check in with you. I have to say it just because we've been talking about it all week in Discord. Go Lightning. So defeated
go Bruins.
Well, you got your own. We'll talk about you in a couple weeks when Lightning beat you. But anyways, Jacob, besides having your Canes lose to my Lightning last night, how are you doing?
Yeah. That was pretty rough. I basically after the second goal went in, I just walked upstairs and started working on the show outline some more. So that was a good time. Definitely thank you, Lightning, for allowing me to make sure I finished the summary for the comics. But yeah, Vasilevsky is broken. Someone needs to ban him from the league. It's trash. Anyways.
Yeah, that's what everybody who's not in Tampa thinks. So, and now we come to our first guest host of the night, our first repeat guest host of the night, Jared. We are back for round 2.
How are you doing tonight? Guest? Oh yeah. All right. You guys gonna send me a medal, or am you gonna stiff me like Chewy and not give me one?
Hey, he got one. He just gave it back.
We will send yours about 30 years into the future.
Perfect.
And last but certainly not least, we have the other host tonight, Freddie. How are we doing tonight?
Finger guns all over, guys. I'm super excited. I am really excited for this event. First time host. I am honored to be here. I love comics, so Legends comics, throw them. Let's do it, guys. I'm so excited.
Yes, it's going to be a fun show. And if you were joining us for the very first time, welcome. We are a Star Wars comic podcast that broadcasts live right here on youtube.com/Youtini every Wednesday night. Normally we do it at 8 o'clock tonight because we're having a special jumbo episode here. We're doing it later tonight at 9. But if you can't join us when we do go live, that's okay. All of our videos are available on the YouTube channel for you to watch whenever you want to. And we are also available on all of your favorite podcast platforms as well. So when you find us either here on YouTube or on the podcast, make sure you give us a like, you give us a subscribe, and you can make sure you join us for all of the fun topics that we talk about. We also encourage you to join us in our Discord, which has over 1,000 members in it. Our Discord is growing so large these days. It is youtini.com/Discord. We have so many channels, comics channels, legends channels, book channels, everything that you want. It is a great community, and I highly encourage you to join it. And if you like what you see tonight, or if you like what you see in the Discord community, then head on over to patreon.com/Youtini, and where for as little as $5 a month, you can gain exclusive access to the entire Youtini podcast network of shows, as well as exclusive merch and community events. So we have a very busy show tonight, so I am going to go ahead and get right into the weekly pull list. Again, another short list tonight, but we've got 2 entries tonight. So Jacob, what do we have on the weekly pull list?
Right. So you said 2 entries. We actually only have 1 single issue comic, but I do want to start making sure we note when the trade paperbacks come out, just because that's what a lot of our show is based off of. So the first one is a single issue Bounty Hunters number 13. Showdown on Smuggler's Moon, which isn't that like the second trade paperback of the Star Wars 2015?
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, it's like it's behind me. I'll check when the camera's not on me. Written by Ethan Sachs, pencils Paolo Velnelli. The cover is Giuseppe Camuncoli, colorist R.F. Priento, and letterer Travis Lanham. And I want to make sure, I forgot to do this last week, but it is Pride Month, and in honor of Pride Month, let's celebrate those Pride covers. Today's Pride cover that's coming out today is Irka Quell from Alphabet Squadron for the Bounty Hunters, the same issue I just talked about, and this cover is by Jacopo Kamangi. So every issue gets a cover featuring an LGBTQIA member of the Star Wars universe, and is drawn by someone at part of that community as well. So yeah, rocking the Irka variant. And then also, yeah, we have a Bounty Hunters trade paperback that comes out. That came out yesterday. Those usually come out on Tuesdays. This is Target Valence Volume 2, written by Ethan Sachs. The cover art is by the pencils for the series is Paolo Villanelli, and the cover for this is by Lee Bermejo. So all the links for that are down in the description if you want to get your own copy on Comixology.
That second volume, definitely, it's much better in my opinion than the first volume.
I've not read it,
so
but I'll get there eventually.
Yeah, I have to agree. And that Pride cover too. Oh my gosh,
so
the
cool. Pride cover. We had
Yeah.
Afra last week. We've got Irka Quell this week. They are just knocking it out of the park with representation and just amazing art. It's an awesome way to celebrate everybody in that way. So keep an eye out for all those variant covers. You guys know who you are, who love the variant covers. So now we're going to go ahead and dive right into what we are loving. And we'll start with my art of the week. This really could have been one of like 8 different pieces of art, and we'll kind of talk about it more in depth later. But this is a piece from Shadows of the Empire, issue number 1. The like I said, I'm not going to talk too much about it right now, because we will talk about it as we get into the full review. But yeah, the space battles in this book are really, really cool. The color is a lot different than what it is what we see currently. So pretty much every turn of the page, I was telling Jacob I unsent like 3 different versions of like, nope, I want this one instead. So
Look
yeah,
at that
definitely
90s glory.
Absolutely. So Emma, what is your art of the week this week?
Yeah, so mine is from Age of Rebellion, Princess Leia number 1, with art by Mark Deering, Will Sliney, Chris Sprouse, and Carl Story. And this kind of ties into this week's episode with Leia in the Bausch outfit here, and Lando as well, with Boss coming down on them. I love the angle here, and I don't know, something about this art it was so striking, very cool. I love it.
All right, and now Caleb, I have no words for this.
Neither did I. Like after I read this art, this is from the Age of Rebellion, the sub-story Stolen Valor, and it features Porkins and Biggs, who both died in the Death Star run taking a vacation, and it's the weirdest thing. I blew up on our personal Slack channel, like, what the hell did I just read? And I could not make this the art of the week. There's just so It's such a wild trip. You
Wow,
guys have to read it just for
It's
the
so
sake of reading it.
pastel-y.
We talk about how
that's-
Caleb's
that's a
shirt
word.
matches.
Yeah. Maybe I subconsciously picked the shirt because of this. It's a wild trip. If you want to see something that's never been done in Star Wars before, not saying it should be, but it's definitely like a weird existential, like, I'm not going to say Rick and Morty in that sort of style, but like that sort of existential crisis of like humanity that is happening in this series. And you wouldn't tell by looking at it. It's wild.
There are no. I have no words, so I'm just gonna move right along.
You should.
To Jacob.
Yeah. So I concur. It's a wild comic. But mine is I'm just rounding out the Age of Rebellion with mine from Age of Rebellion Luke Skywalker, with pencils by Chris Sprouse and Stefano Landini and colors by Tamara Bonvillain. So it's just a great hero shot of Luke tearing through some Imperial security droids. I don't know if I need to say much else. It looks awesome. So
That's so
that's
cool.
about it.
And we are a comic show, so that qualifies.
It's
So-
kind of
It's pretty.
right. All right, Jacob. Or not Jacob. Jacob just went. So
I could be
Jared-
Jacob.
Well, Jared. You know,
I was
let's-
Jacob one
let's-
time.
You're right. Absolutely. So what was your art of the week this week?
Yeah, I've got a panel here from Shadows of the Empire number 3. This is drawn by Killian Plunkett, and I think I had this sent to Jacob within seconds of turning to this page on my iPad. I absolutely love Kowakian monkey lizards, and this is, for my money, one of the best drawn Kowakian monkey lizards in the history of Star Wars comics.
The non-sandy Jabba.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty spot on.
Jabba was very interesting in this book. And Freddie, I haven't seen your art, but in the show notes, it's described as NASCAR Chewbacca. So again, I am extremely interested in what this is.
Okay, so if there's one thing that Legends Look Back does really well at, it's coming up with memes, right? We've got Slippery, Slimy, Palpatine. We've got Nubbins Vader.
We
Now
got
we've
Hot Dog Boba Fett.
Hot Dog Boba Fett. Yeah,
That's right.
I want to say that was a Cosmic Force.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
Emma's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that, people.
Well, in my piece, we've got what I call NASCAR Chewbacca. So we see him, and this whole thing is really nice. First of all, the art is really well done. There's a sense of urgency, which, to draw urgency in a picture or in anything is really, it's pretty amazing, and you can just see it without reading any of the text. There's a lot going on. But in the very first panel, Chewbacca has what looks like a mullet and buck teeth. If you zoom in, obviously you might not be able to, but do it in the comic. It's there.
What issue is this from?
This is, I want to say
6.
4.
Yeah.
This note is
I
the
would say
last
5 or
one.
6.
5?
This is
Yeah.
the last
5.
one.
Yeah, this is number 5.
Number
Oh,
5? I
man.
thought it was number 6.
So NASCAR Chewbacca, he's there, and I picked it because it was just I laughed so hard, and nothing in the text is funny, but it's just he looks good.
There you go. There you go. All right. So we're gonna go
Okay,
ahead
we
and
zoomed in
go
on it.
straight into the what. Oh, there we go. Oh, we are zooming in. Okay, awesome. Definitely. We'll have to pull that back up when we talk about the book later. So we're going to talk about now what we've been reading, and it hasn't been much. For me, it's been Shadows of the Empire, and only a real little bit of Evolution. So because it's been a pretty busy week. So we'll talk about that and more. Emma, what about you?
Yeah, much of the same for me. I read Shadows of the Empire, Shadows of the Empire Evolution, and the Shadows of the Empire novel. And then
Oh,
I was
wow.
reviewing Thrawn Greater Good for the Living Force Roundtable. So I've kind of been doing a little bit of everything this week.
Yeah, you are killing it with all the with all the podcast shows. You had time to read all that as well.
Not all of it. I just kind of reviewed Thrawn. I kind of like watched my review video again because I was like, oh, I have all my thoughts here. Like, oh, that's perfect. And I, kind of read Wikipedia a little bit. Just to, no, I did not have time to read a whole nother Thrawn book, given how dense it is. Man, nah, no way. But yeah, a lot of Shadows of the Empire. I finished that in like less than a week, I think, to make sure I had it in time. for tomorrow's show, and that was quite the adventure, which I'm sure we'll talk about tomorrow.
Well, once again, you are putting me to shame. So, Caleb, I'm going to pass it to you. What are you reading this week?
Oh Lord, I'm catching up on a lot. I finished off Ahsoka, the audiobook for Ahsoka, which is actually kind of relevant with what's going on with Bad Batch right now. Ironically, didn't know that going into it. I'm also going through the Afra audio drama, so that's been a pretty good read. It's nice. I've been catching up on all the Shadows of the Empire, past and present, and also I've been reading. The weirdest thing it came up in the Marvel app. Star Wars Agent of the Empire is an old Dark Horse, essentially James Bond Star Wars series, and it's really good, question mark. I haven't finished the first arc yet, but it's I love when Star Wars does something very unique with its storytelling, and it's definitely kind of a copy paste of James Bond, and it's very interesting. I like it a lot.
So no pink and pastels and no people riding a dinosaur in a lake.
That was last week.
All right, Jacob, what are you reading?
Yeah, so like everyone else, I read Shadows of the Empire and Shadows of the Empire Evolution, and it was like unfortunate because I got in such a motivated mood to just like I wanted to burn through a ton of canon comic books. I'm like, well, I have to read through all these Legends comic books, and like I enjoyed the experience of them, but I like read them multiple times to make sure I actually absorbed it all. So I'm gonna try and like read like 50 canon comic books next week. That's my goal. And
50
then
canon comic books.
I have like 50 issues left before I basically finish out the 2015 era of all that stuff. And then I'll feel happy. So then
somebody in chat, keep him honest next week. You heard it here. 50 comic books next week.
7 days, 50 divided by 7. How many
not
do you have
bad,
to read
really.
a
That's
day?
only 7.
That's only 7. It's not a lot, but that's assuming we're not doing anything else.
Right. Well, okay. Yeah. Hold on. let me pull it back a little bit. But no, I think it's reasonable. Yeah. It would take me around Empire Sin. I have 50. Yeah. Empire Ascendant is 50 issues away from me right now, which is kind of the end of all that. So I think I can do it. We'll see. But yeah, I did that, and I read like one chapter of Alphabet Squadron because it takes me forever. And then I didn't read it, but I listened to the Shadows of the Empire soundtrack,
That
which
counts.
I have on vinyl behind me.
That counts.
Oh, on vinyl.
It's nice. It is
Awesome.
shockingly good, like shockingly good. We'll definitely like even if you outside of the comics and the movie and the book and the game, I would recommend anyone listen to it. So.
All right, Jared. It seems here that you're adventuring outside of Star Wars for right now for what you're reading.
Well, the thing that I'm reading for Star Wars is like a super secret thing right now, so I can't tell you. But
gotcha.
But I did read about 1,000 pages of grad school material because I've got an intensive class this week. So if you want to know about the ancient Babylonian roots that are referenced within the Book of Ecclesiastes, I'm your guy. But that's
so
not,
is that what
comic.
you've been talking about in the company Slack?
Yeah, we have
couple days.
some crazy religious conversations. But in terms of comics, I've been reading the Power Rangers comics with my kids, and we've been doing this for months. We are right now in the middle of the 2018 Mighty Morphin Power Ranger run, which is one of the best comics of
it's
of
the best
anything.
Power Rangers. So
it is seriously. I've read thousands of comics in my life. They are some of the very best comics of any franchise I've ever read. We're right in the middle of the Shattered Grid crossover event, and it is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I actually had to miss out on tonight's reading for the show, so you guys owe an apology to my kids.
your excitement has me excited. I might have to start putting some research into this
book.
book.
You not? They're unbelievable.
Freddie, let's bring it back. What are you reading?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm reading Shatterpoint, which is by Matthew Stover. I believe it was released around June 2013, and it's number 1, I believe, in the Clone Wars series. I think that's what I have in the show notes. Clearly, I just shut them off once I'm done looking at them. Right, Jared?
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, I've slept on a lot of Clone Wars content in Legends, and I'm catching up on it now, and I like it a lot. So I'm pretty excited to get started with Shatterpoint.
Nice.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and hit our video listeners, video viewers. We're gonna go ahead and toss it to a merch ad, and then when we come back, we are talking about this guy right here, not this novel, but this crossover right here. So let's go ahead and we'll be right back. All right. So the main topic of the show tonight is, we've been hyping up War of the Bounty Hunter. And if, again, I can't stress this enough, if you haven't read issue 1 yet, please go get that. You will not be disappointed. But in honor of that, we've kind of had this idea. Jared I believe had this idea. So I'm going to go ahead and let him kind of explain it. But Jared, why are we talking about a book and novel, or a book and comic book that came out, in the 90s?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you for asking me. It's almost like I wrote that question myself. Here's the thing. It is 2021. This story came out in 1996, which makes it what anniversary? You did math.
I was told there'd be no math.
Well, I'm
25 years old.
It's like I'm 25 and was born that year, so I'm gonna go with 25.
There you go. Oh, happy birthday. And also
math, yeah.
happy birthday to Shadows of the Empire. It is the 25th anniversary. And so this is something that we've been planning for maybe about 6-8 months now. As soon
right, Freddie's got his, I've got mine.
Right about the time that you guys launched the Cosmic Force, I was like, we've got to do a crossover event, because that's the big thing in comics. There's a tremendous history of comics crossover events. I just mentioned Shattered Grid and Power Rangers. Of course, there's Secret Wars and Marvel. There's some good old school Legends crossover events. There's the Vector storyline. We've got a new one happening right now in War of the Bounty Hunters. And so to coincide with that, we've got the Legends roots of what is being referenced in War of the Bounty Hunters, the original reference material. That way now when we get deeper into War of the Bounty Hunters, we can say who did it better, canon or Legends. You can see how the story deviated. If they reference anything, you can catch the Easter eggs, guys. We know we love our Easter eggs.
We do.
And so, that's the basic gist of it. Also, with the High Republic, we've got this massive multimedia storytelling initiative. We've got no vinyl soundtrack yet. Where's that for High Republic? We need a vinyl soundtrack, don't we?
Oh, 100%. That sounds so cool.
We don't have Funko Pops. We don't have action figures, but Shadows of the Empire had action figures. Rumor has it there were even Halloween costumes. I have yet to find any of them.
Oh my gosh.
I do not remember. I do remember having the Outrider. I do remember having Dash Rendar, Prince Shizor, and all of those action figures when I was a kid. I do not remember Halloween costumes.
It is in the Essential Readers book, with the one that Freddie loves, the one with Yoda on the cover. Pablo Hidalgo says that there were Halloween costumes. So, hey, got to hold them accountable. They're out there somewhere. If you find them, send me one, please. And I can't wait to dress my little kids up like Prince Shizor.
Well, since I believe you and I are the only ones who can remember this, and we're alive when this originally came out. Let's go ahead.
Freddie's my age.
Freddie, you're our age too. Okay, I apologize for that. I did not know that. Okay. So let's catch everybody else up. Emma, why don't you give us a little bit of background on everything about Shadows of the Empire, when it came out, where we are on the timeline, and all the other details.
Yeah, sure. So this whole event was released between May and October of 1996, and was set between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, similar to the time period that War of the Bounty Hunters is set in today. The creatives behind this for the comics, the comics were written by John Wagner, who was adapting the novel by Steve Perry. The penciler was Killian Plunkett, who, by the way, if this name is familiar, it should be. He was the lead character designer on the Clone Wars and the art director on Rebels. And by the way, I didn't know this until just now reading it on the show notes. And so my mind is blown, and I'm very impressed by that. Because in the omnibus on my iPad, I was like, oh, where's the writers and the artists? And it didn't list any of them. And I was going to look it up later, and I forgot. And man, that's so cool that Killian Plunkett did that. I love that.
It is cool.
The inker was P. Craig Russell. The color artist was Carrie Porter. The letterer was Dave Cooper, and the cover artist was Hugh Fleming. So that's a little bit of background information on this initiative and specifically these comics. Tyler, I'm going to throw it over to you to start off our summary.
So the first thing that we need to understand is the timeline here. And yes, it was set between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, but I believe, Jacob, this was technically set 3+ Star Wars 4. What was the weird funky?
It was like ASW4 was after Star Wars Episode 4 was like the timeline.
After Star Wars 4.
Notation at the front of it. It was, I mean, it's like basically directly after, like they're talking about how Luke basically just got his new hand.
Yes.
So
after 5.
Yeah, after 5. But yeah, the time, instead of ABY, it was ASW4 in the beginning of the book.
3
Very
plus
weird.
ASW4.
Yeah.
First time I'd ever seen that connotation in the timeline. But we are set right after the events of The Empire Strikes Back. In issue 1, the Rebel fleet is being pursued by the Empire. Vader has been commanded by the Emperor to work with Prince Shizor of the crime syndicate Black Sun to ensure that the Endor project goes smoothly. We all know what that Endor project is. Boba Fett is on his way to Tatooine to drop off. Boba Fett.
Where?
He is on his way to Tatooine to drop off the infamous Han Solo. But as with all of these Star Wars stories, that doesn't go as planned because he is being intercepted by a number of bounty hunters, starting with IG-88. So by the time that this first book ends, he is being pursued by IG-88, and then that leads us right into issue number 2. And Jacob, why don't you pick it up from there?
Yeah, and as you know, all these guys playing the Shadows of the Empire video game, IG-88, no big deal. Anyways, so moving on. Issue number 2, Vader sends his agent Jix to Tatooine to work under Jabba the Hutt and make sure Luke is captured alive. And Vader will be too busy working with Shizor under the command of the Emperor. And Jix manages to infiltrate Big Giz's swoop gang.
And it begins.
Big Giz. All right, anyways. The Rebels and Dash Rendar converge on Gaul to look for Boba Fett. And Rogue Squadron fights with the Empire overhead as the Outrider and the Falcon race down to the surface of the planet. And yet again, we end an issue with Boba Fett being confronted by more bounty hunters, but he manages to escape.
Yeah, they kind of put those bounty hunter scenes just like right at the beginning or right at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to keep that excitement high.
Right.
Yeah.
Tune in next week.
Yeah. So, and then issue 3, Jix, who's a comics exclusive character, by the way. He's only in the comic adaptation. Jix learns Jabba is now asking for Luke dead against the wishes of Vader. So they go to find him at Ben's hut, where Luke has just completed his new saber and he ignites the green for the first time. They fight through Beggar's Canyon, where Luke is saved, honestly, by Dash Rendar. And the rebels then, of course, learn of an Imperial computer on Bothawai and head over there. However, it was leaked by the Emperor, and we learn that Shizor is playing both sides, kind of like the Spider-Man meme. Finally, it seems like the bounty hunters have finally caught up with Boba Fett, and that's where we go to issue 4.
That's me,
Friday,
right?
Friday, why don't you go ahead and give us the issue 4 summary?
All right, so yeah, issue number 4. First of all, that cover art for issue number 4 is beautiful. We've got Boosh and what was his name?
Oh Lord, the Wookiee bounty hunter.
Yes.
Uva. Yeah, so at the beginning of the issue, we've got Bosk, of course, like Jared said, we've got the bounty hunters right at the beginning. And Bosk and Zuckuss and some other expendable bounty hunters are heading after Boba Fett's quarry, which we all know is the Han and Carbonite, right? And everyone wants a piece of this action because it's a lot of money. Let's just split it, guys. Come on, Boba Fett. No, he wants it all. So we're going. We're trying to get Boba Fett. They're trying to get Boba Fett in. I guess take him out of the action. He ends up not doing it right. They send over the shuttle, and I want to say Zuckuss is in that shuttle. They send him back.
Zuckuss stays behind.
That's right.
Yeah, Zuckuss is a bait for later.
That's right. He's the bait. So they send over that bomb, and then bang, we've got some damage on the Houndstooth. So that's that storyline. But it's crazy. First of all, the amount of storylines in these comics is nuts. So we've got another storyline with Luke, right? We just have the aftermath of the attack on the Imperial frigate that was transporting the Imperial secret. And of course, the pilots were inexperienced, and that's where we get our first 6 Bothans that have died for the sake of the secret.
Many Bothans died to bring us this information.
All 6 of them.
This is 6 of many. This is just the beginning because they're in the ship, right? So I'm assuming at this point Luke is just reflecting back and he's on base, and it's like a hidden slicing Bothan facility, and it gets attacked by a bunch of bounty hunters, and everyone's confused, not sure what's going on. But it turns out they're only there for Luke, and they end up killing Koth, who is one of the characters in the movie, in the book that you see more of. And they end up capturing Luke, and he eventually uses the Jedi mind trick to escape. But he does find out that there's 2 bounties for him. One for him alive, and then one for him dead. Of course, the third storyline, we've got Chewbacca. A lot of actions going on in this comic or in this issue. We've got Chewbacca, Leia, their storyline where they dress up as Boushh and Snuva, and of course, Guri is trying to sneak them into Imperial Center to go meet Shizor. And this is the moment where you see the initial reaction of Leia, and her face just changes. You can see the pheromones just leaking throughout the panel.
Don't use that word leaking, please.
What if it was like a scratch and sniff comic?
Goodbye,
You could
Freddy.
smell the pheromones.
Oh yes.
Another one.
Welcome
the panel
to
is just
Youtini After
moist
Dark.
with Shizor's pheromones, moist.
No.
Damn it, Freddie.
Please no.
Boot you from the Zoom call.
All right, guys, that's the end of that issue.
Well done, Freddie.
All
It gets
right.
worse.
I don't know.
I made Emma read the worst one of them all.
Yeah, I saw that. I don't appreciate that. Somehow it was deserved. So, anyways, issue number 5 begins with Lando busting Luke out of the prison from those bounty hunters. And they go to rendezvous with Leia. Luke is like all bent out of shape about Leia and Chewie going into the heart of Black Sun. He thinks it's like way too dangerous, and he's bent out of shape about that. And then we go back, and if I could read this while rolling my eyes, I would, but I can't. Shizor and Leia, and I quote from whoever wrote the show notes, start to get frisky before Chewie comes in and, I can't say that on the show, interrupts them.
I appreciate your editing there, Emma.
Mm-hmm. No, hey, I did the editing to begin with. It was a joke.
He did.
For
He
her.
did. So disgusting.
Shizor's mad
Okay.
about it. Shizor's not
turns
happy
out-
with
No, he is not having that.
No. And you know what? Good for Chewie.
That's right.
Have a Chewie in your
Chewie's a
life.
bro.
Yes.
Drew's the
Yes.
ultimate wingman, playing the long
He is
game there.
he's such a great wingman. You got to have somebody like him around. So it turns out Shizor has irresistible pheromones that lets him seduce people. So that's great. When she returns, she gets her revenge and is locked away in her room because now she knows. So she's like, okay, I'm not going to let you get the better of me. So all of a sudden the pheromones don't work, which thank goodness, because things have gotten worse. And now Shizor's mad because he's not getting his way and he's not used to that. And that's also disgusting. So
Yep.
That is issue 5. Next is issue 6.
All right, here we go. Let's land this plane here. We kind of jump cut into the smash cut into the best part of any video game adaptation, the sewer level. Yeah, so we have our main characters of Luke, Dash, Rendar, Lando, and a couple others breaking into the Shizor's palace's sewers. They come up and they manage to find Leia as she was escaping, and Chewie. Then Shizor faces down with them, but Lando pulls the old dead man switch on a thermal detonator, proving that he's better than Han in every way possible, because that one actually time it worked. And then Lando bombs the central core, setting off a chain reaction, destroying his fancy castle compound. Shizor himself retreats to his Skyhook, his fancy space battleship, where Vader blasts out of the sky for attempting to even lay a finger on his son. Then Boba manages to resolve his main plot by tricking the rest of the bounty hunters and delivering Solo to Jabba, collecting his reward and stunting on everyone else. And lastly, Darth Vader arrives at the Death Star 2, reminding you that he's still in the series and that the galaxy will still be his and his son's.
Wonder how that turns out. Anyways,
come back next week.
Yes. So that's the quick rundown. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go around the room. I'm actually going to go last, but I'm going to go around the room and give it and let everybody give their initial reaction for this book. We'll talk about the evolutions a little bit at the end, but I really want to take some time, a lot of the time, to focus on the main Shadows of the Empire book. So I'm going to start with Freddie, and as after that just amazing rendition of issue 4. I'm going to ask what you would grade this entire arc.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to first read the book, then play the video game, and then read the comic.
Absolutely.
Right. It's really intense to see the visuals, but in a different point of view, and it definitely skips over a lot of detail. But honestly, for a comic, I mean, what do you expect? I mean, it's beautiful. The art is great. I love the art. The storyline is creepy. I mean, it's it's 90s creepy, but it's, in my eyes, there's a lot of nostalgia. But I give it a solid 7.2 in my eyes.
Okay, that's respectable. Jacob, what about you? What's your rating?
Ooh, so see, here's the thing. Freddie did all these things. I did not do all these things. I have read the comics. I have listened to the soundtrack. So there's a lot of story I missed, and I understand there are things you have to cut down, but like, I've read movie adaptations in comics. It's not that bad. Like, there are mid-issue scenarios where they will like clearly jump in time a lot and explain nothing.
Right.
So couple that with some other things. I understand that is an important piece of Legends, but I'm sorry, I'm gonna give it like a 6.
I can understand your point of view, because I was going to comment about that as well. Caleb, before I say that, let's go ahead and get your review.
I'm going to have to go with Jacob here. Like, it's pretty bad. Like, I think the plot jumps around way too much. If it had just been the Boba Fett series, like, for an issue, and then like the Darth Vader for an issue, that would have been better. But he jumped around too quickly and too much for like the narrative stakes to make much sense. So I'm going to have to give it a 6. That's being generous in my opinion. I might drop it down at the end.
They tried to replicate, I think, how the book was doing it, and that's exactly how I read it in the comic, and it might not have translated well.
And even the book jumped around too much.
Yeah.
Emma, what about you? We'll come to you next.
Yeah, so I had an interesting experience with this entire crossover, really. I read the comics first, and then I watched a playthrough of the video game, and then I read the novel. And I really understand you guys saying like how much it jumped around, because once I read the novel, I was like, oh, all of this makes so much more sense now. Like sometimes you're like, why is this character here? What is he doing here? Why are we all of a sudden over here and not back there? And things like that. So It did jump around a lot. I feel like it was really trying hard to adapt the novel, but ran out of time to do as good of a job as it could have. And obviously, which we'll talk about later, a lot of problematic things with its treatment of women. So I'm going to give it a 5.8.
Okay. All right. Jared, we'll come to you.
Here's the thing. All right. You guys are all critiquing the way it jumps around. What you got to know is that this functions within the great history of Legends comic adaptations of Legends books. So they did one of these for the original Thrawn trilogy. There's a comic adaptation of Han Solo at Star's End. In more recent canon history, there's an adaptation of Thrawn, not to be confused with the original Thrawn trilogy or with the new Thrawn Ascendancy series, the one in the middle. Choose the one in the middle. It's the one just called Thrawn, right? So they did an adaptation. Yeah. They're making one now of Weapon of a Jedi by Jason Fry. So this is a part of that history. As a comic, you're right. It does jump around too much. I'll give it a 6.9.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and agree with a lot of what everybody's already said. Like I said, I was around when these things came out. So I read the novel when I was a teenager. I played the video game, and if I didn't, I don't know if I could have enjoyed this because I don't know who these characters like other than Shizor, and like we'll talk a little bit more at length about that. It was hard to keep up with. However, for the art alone, I would recommend at least picking this up because the art is really, really great. And so I have to separate from an art perspective. I'm making up my own rules here. From an art perspective, I would give this like an 8.5. And from a story and everything but the art, I would probably be in like a 6.5 category as well, because it's hard. I mean, I haven't read many Legends comics. And Jared, if they're all like this,
they're not. This is one of the weaker ones. This is one of the weaker ones.
Okay, good.
That I've read at least. Yeah. I think I would give the crossover as a whole a much higher rating. But as a comic,
we'll get into that.
This is a weaker link. It is a weaker link.
We'll get into that. So all right. So let's go ahead and get into the characters a little bit. And Jacob, I'm going to let you start us off with a character who is for all the mediums that we're talking about, pretty much sidelined in this medium in Dash Rendar.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious. So Dash Rendar, our smuggler, our Han Solo villain, if you will, our hero of the video game. As someone who's just read the comics, you really don't get a whole lot of Dash Rendar. He has like less than one scene per comic book,
and he literally pops up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Another thing is, it seems like he also changes his art style every time he appears. Like he looks different every time.
True. His hair definitely changes, I feel like, quite a few times. But yeah, so I didn't get as much of Dash Rendar. You can definitely flesh out a character with less time, but I feel like he was more a narrative device in this comic book than he was a character. Like he'd show up to do a thing. Like he shows up to save Luke, and he shows up to get Lando to the planet, and he shows up to help them inside the castle. But he has more. I mean, he's doing more actions, to fulfill the plot than he does, actually have character moments. So I'm curious, those who have read the novels and played the video game, how does he compare? Because I didn't really, I didn't have much to really make an opinion off of him in this.
Yeah, that's a good one, Jacob. So think of it this way: there's a lot of other storylines happening in the book, probably about 2 to 3 times the amount that's happening here in the comic book. So you're reading about other timelines of him, storylines of him interacting with Leia, at a certain point, and they're having a whole event going on where they're at in a casino even, right? And there's that whole section I don't think is even in the comic book, but they're talking there, they're stuck there, they're trying to wait for a representative for Black Sun, and then Dash, Leia says, "Go take care of Luke," but in the comic book, it almost seems like he just kind of happens to be there.
He just shows up.
Yeah. He literally pops up.
Yeah, so it's filling in the gaps, right? That's kind of what the book and the comic are doing. It's just, you definitely need to, I think, consume the content from the experience of Shadows of the Empire to really understand all of the bits and pieces and why it all kind of floats in and makes sense.
When he shows up, it's just kind of like, oh, hey Dash, like there's no like, who are you? like he's established himself, and it was jarring in the comic, but I don't remember, like, he is the I think it was Jared had said he is the hero of the video game, and that's what I remember. I remember him in the video game, and I remember a much more fleshed out character from the novel, and I enjoyed his character in the novelization. Emma, what are your thoughts on Dash? And maybe, you could kind of almost assume that he's kind of a Han Solo fill-in. So does he succeed in that way, or is he just what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I feel like he felt more like Han Solo in the novel, but in this comic, I have no idea what role he was even trying to fill. He was just in and out so quickly. I mean, I suppose you could kind of look at that in like a Han Solo way. He always kind of came back when you needed him. But in the novel, I would say you got a lot more emotion out of him and a lot more of the backstory of why he was where he was, where for example, and I'm thinking of one specific moment in the comics, is that when we're on Tatooine and we see Dash, all of a sudden he's just like hanging out at the cantina. We're like, well, why is he there? But in the novel, you see that Leia paid him to make sure Luke doesn't die, basically, because he's being hunted by the Black Sun and all of that. So it's things like that the novel really enhanced, because you get more of that backstory, and he's not doing it just to be a good guy. He's doing it for the credits, which is Han Solo-esque in a way, early Han Solo. So I don't think that he could ever make up for Han's absence in this story, but he certainly fills a tiny bit of that void.
So does he?
But we already have a Han Solo villain. His name's Lando Calrissian.
Yeah.
Like, we already have that character here. Like,
Lando's
I think
his own dude. In my eyes, yeah.
I know, but like in the thing, like, honestly, I think this is a super cynical take. The reason Dash Rindar's in this comic is so that he can sell N64 cartridges
and
totally
action
wrong.
figures and
Yeah,
action figures.
Yeah.
I actually listened to an interview with the game designer. I forget his name, but he's great. I can plug a link in the Cosmic Force Discord channel, and he actually talks about like how this whole story crossover event was designed by committee, which he says is not the best way to make a video game, because he did have direct intervention from Mr. Miyamoto himself at Nintendo, who said, like, we need to have a character who is original to this N64 game, that is a proprietary Nintendo character. They wanted to make Boba Fett the star of the book, or of the game, their playable character be Boba Fett. And so, you're not wrong. He is shoehorned into this story because of Nintendo.
I think it was John Knowles, right?
Yeah, John Knowles.
So interesting.
Okay, cool.
So
Jacob,
yeah.
what did you think of Dash's ending? Because I think you were the one who was like,
I was talking about this in the pre-show, that I didn't notice that he died until my second read through, because like they're flying away, like the Skyhook blew up, and I think it was like Lando's in the cockpit, or someone's in the cockpit.
I think it's Luke. I think
Yeah.
it's Luke and Chewie.
Luke and Chewie, and they're like,
Oh
Dash,
boy, he
they're
died.
Like, they're like, Dash, look out, and you see them like covering their eyes, and there's a bright light, and then that's it. And they're like, oh,
But you
okay.
don't see an explosion. Like,
Yeah,
it's a
no.
cockpit.
So-
it's
so
like
to
an
be
external
fair-
cockpit view.
Okay, to be fair, they need that. You can't see the explosion because he, spoilers, he fakes his death. He like jumps to hyperspace before he hits this piece of debris to make sure, to get out of the situation. Which I don't know, I guess as a bounty, or not bounty hunter, a smuggler or whatever, that's kind of, I don't know if you want to be doing that, because it's gonna be hard for them to pay you if they think you're dead. But yeah,
point.
it's like, so like the way with a comic book, it's, you see you see the Outrider going this direction, and there's just kind of a lot of stuff, so you don't really see this debris that he's shooting for really pop out very much. So yeah, like my second read through, I'm like, wait, is he dead? And I like went on Wikipedia, like, he's, kind of dead, but not really. So
Yeah, he's sipping daiquiris with Catwoman
Mostly.
in Italy.
Yeah, so I definitely missed that my first read through. But I don't know. I guess going back to the whole Han Solo comparison, I guess he's Han Solo, but without that like heart of gold. I mean, he's got it a little bit, but definitely not to the extent that Han does. Because Han, like, I mean, he's in it for the credits. He's in it because of the job, but that's not the reason he stays. Whereas Dash, I'm not entirely sure. It's like, don't get me wrong. It's like I want to love Dash. Like Dash seems like kid growing up in the 90s. Dash seems so cool. I just don't know who he is at this point, having just read the comic book. So I'm definitely gonna get to the game, and maybe someday I'll get to the novel. But
the funny thing about the difference between the Heart of Gold, right, between Dash and Han, is in the book it's especially more explicit when they go to the planet Gaul they finally found Boba Fett. They're going to get Han back, except for only 100 pages in the book, and so they're going to fail because he's got to be in Jabba's palace, Return of the Jedi, right? And so Dash leads them through this perilous adventure, and Dash and Lando are like trying to one up each other on who's the better pilot. It's so ridiculous. And then
he just
Dash straight up yeets out of there.
Yeah.
He's like,
that was in the comic book, yeah.
He's like, but it's so much more explicit in the book where he's like, yeah, you guys didn't pay me enough to actually fight Boba Fett. I'm leaving. And whereas Han, of course, in New Hope, he comes back to save the day in the end. But that is not the case. He abandons them.
All right, let's switch gears here and talk about the other original character in this crossover medium, and that's Prince Caesar, which for the record was I was, as a kid, it was Zizor to me, but apparently I'm wrong. So it's Caesar. So Emma, let's just go off the cuff and just say your blanket interpretation and thoughts on this character.
Yeah, so let's save the problematic stuff for a little bit. Let's just start off with the character,
sure,
as a whole. So obviously Caesar, he was the leader of the Black Sun and was incredibly wealthy. I found the descriptions, I think this was in the novel. Now I'm getting all mixed up because I read both in the same week. But I think this was in the novel.
Stay on target.
The descriptions, the descriptions of his wealth, like that he had so much money he had no idea how to spend it all, and things like that. That nothing was too luxurious for him, and things like that. All of this wealth came from Black Sun and all of his dealing, like shady stuff and dealings and things like that. And that to me shows that the criminal underworld is just, I don't know how else to say it, like just so overpowered. Like they can basically operate outside the law if they're careful, of course, and it's a wealthy business. And additionally, we see in both the comic and the novel that the Empire hires Black Sun, so they're even hiring a shady organization and lining their coffers as well. So I'm gonna toss this question out to Freddie first. What did you think about the portrayal of the criminal underworld and sort of the relationship between the Empire and Black Sun?
Yeah, so that's a cool thing, because in the underworld, your life is expendable, right? And that's the biggest thing about the underworld, is they don't really care. And if you mess up, if they kill you, that's kind of part of the job, right? Is you just can't expect to live too long. And that's, I guess, where you see the high reward. And for Caesar, he lives in complete secrecy. Not secrecy, but he doesn't really, FaceTime with anybody. He's got like an armored, what is it? This is all part of the book. I'm getting confused here now too.
Stay on target.
But basically what's going on is there's a lot of money, right? There's a lot of money in the underground. There's a lot of money in spice. There's a lot of money to be made. And how do you do that in our current world, right? The way you do it is to wash it clean. And in order to do that, you have to start a legitimate business. And
Bitcoin?
Yeah, Bitcoin. So by Caesar having legitimate transportation businesses, right? And this, he could probably do half the rate of what others are paying because he has most likely slaves working for him, right? Just really underground shady things. So he makes himself a useful criminal, basically. And it's really interesting.
Could you call him a smooth criminal, Freddie? Well, I will say on the jumping onto my preacher soapbox here, one of the things about power is that you've all heard the expression power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. You guys heard this one?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's especially true for Shizor because he becomes a monster. He is one of the most appallingly evil characters in all of Star Wars. And I have read him in a number of other Legends books. He's in like Scoundrels, for example, and he's in the Coruscant Knights trilogy. But oh man, I was just shaking with anger reading Shizor. He's so dislikable. Plus, he just likes to take a lot of baths. He just takes so many baths.
Now, Jared, in the novel, isn't he? I mean, and Emma, I know you just read it, so you can weigh in this as well. Isn't he played off as more cunning and more of a smarter character, as like, because that's what I feel like they're trying to portray in the comic, is that he's trying to outthink and be 3 steps ahead of the Emperor and Darth Vader, and we all know what happens when people think they're in front they're in front of the Emperor, then don't realize he's 10 steps in front of them. But I feel like that angle was played up a lot better in the novel. But that could also be the fact that I read it 20 years ago and I just have no recollection of how the novel actually portrays him.
Yeah, he's sly, he's cunning, he's ruthless, he's scheming. He is, I mean, they're not exactly hiding this very well. It's kind of on the nose. He's reptilian. It's a comparison to Satan in Genesis, right? He's supposed to be a snake. The whole point is, yeah, he is a schemer. He tells half-truths to both Vader and the Emperor in order to manipulate them against each other, just like the serpent does with Adam and Eve. Of course, Shizor in his development was going to be more of like a roguish Han Solo type who would seduce Leia not with pheromones, but with his charm. And then this was something along the way in the development that Lucasfilm said, let's make him more crafty, more cunning, less likable. And let's go into the Godfather route, make him like the Godfather. And I'm glad. I don't think I would have. I'm glad we got the Shizor we got. No, that's not what I'm saying. But it is an interesting take on a villain to have this crafty, scheming, conniving kind of a crime lord. What do you think, Emma?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think, if Prince Shizor was even like a bit more likable, I don't think it would have gotten the point across in any of these stories. And I think, of course, the thing that I think sticks in our brains the most after reading this is all of the problematic things with Shizor. And so I think we should just mention that really quick, just kind of discuss it a little bit.
Let's go ahead and talk about that. There's a very uncomfortable scene between him and Leia, where he's basically trying to seduce her. And it's I mean, I'm going to read the question as it is in the show notes, because I think it pretty much captures the essence of that entire scene. And Emma, I'll ask you first. Is this the single most problematic Star Wars scene? I won't say book, because but from a comics perspective, that entire arc scene, is that one of the most problematic scenes in comics history, Star Wars comics history?
I would say so. For I obviously haven't read every single Star Wars comic, and I've definitely read some things that have been problematic in the past. There was something with bounty hunters a while ago, but this is 100% just like overboard with the uncomfortability, with the I think it's hard. The emotions that I went through reading this in the comics and then having to like re-experience that in the novel, it felt extremely like predatory and just very gross and disgusting. Like, I don't know how in Star Wars storytelling they would approve somebody with pheromones that makes people want to fall in love with them and therefore mistreat people. And obviously, I think it's unfortunate that Leia is an easy target for this type of I would say misuse of her character in Star Wars. She has been misused before because of her looks and that she's a woman. And I think 100% this is just, it blew me away at how problematic it was. And honestly, I'm having a hard time with just saying, the words that match my feelings, but overall, disgusting. Yeah.
How do you feel the redemption and Leia being able to overcome? How was that delivery? What was it? Satisfying? Was it enough? Was it Leia does not overcomes the advances. We'll just leave it at that.
Come on, Tyler. Say what he does.
No,
we're good.
How do you find her ability to overcome Shizor and put an end to that little arc?
Yeah, I had to honestly reflect on this a little bit after I read the comic and the novel, because at first, I was just so disgusted that they even had put her in the situation. But then, reflecting back on it, thinking about this really shows how intelligent she is to be able to figure out I wasn't drugged. This guy has some pheromones and I'm going to do my damnedest to resist it. So first of all, I think it shows her intelligence to do that. Also, I really like how they showed her guilt, even though it wasn't her fault. She was like, I still love Han, and I want to be with Han. I don't know why I want to do this. And that felt also extra gross because she didn't have control over her feelings.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, overall, I like that. I like that it didn't go any further than it did. I hate that they put her in the situation to begin with, but I'm just really thankful that it didn't go any farther.
It still went too far for Star Wars.
100%, 1,000%. Yeah.
I draw I think it's interesting kind of comparing it to Game of Thrones. I've read the books of Game of Thrones, and you have the similar argument of how far can you go to show a bad person in a work of fiction is bad before it's too much. I would say they did it here. I agree with Jared that I think it'd be way better if he was just trying to seduce her. I don't think if you don't take away Leia's power, I mean, it's just at that point it's just a dude being creepy. If you just cut the scenes, you had the first scene in the comic where he's with her, and then the scene after she comes back from Chewbacca. If he just puts the moves on her, it doesn't work, and then you just cut to her the part where she needs him in the crotch. I'm fine with that. At that point, he's just a scummy dude, and he gets what he deserves, and we move on. But the fact that you take away her agency, and Tyler, you asked Emma how you felt about her winning in the end, and I'm happy she won in the end. I agree with that. I am not as satisfied because I interpret it as Chewbacca kind of gets the win a little bit. I feel like it should be Leia winning. I feel like it's Leia. We need canon Leia that punches people in the face.
Yes.
But in this one, it's like Chewbacca's having to shake her out of it, and then she goes in. It's oh, okay, I get it now. So yeah, I think there are ways you could have done this more tactfully, and I'm glad that this kind of thing, likely would not be printed nowadays. I can hope.
But
it's okay to have bad guys. It's okay to have bad guys that do bad things, but let's be reasonable. Let's have limits. So
sure.
Yeah.
Prince Shizor,
right?
Yeah, Prince Shizor is the living embodiment of those Axe body sprays commercials. Yes. In all the most terrible misogynist ways possible.
Yeah, that was. I mean, he is definitely, Shizor will definitely go down as a very infamous character. The book displays,
but not
him
for the ways he would have wanted.
No, not for the ways he would have wanted. But and that's because spoiler alert, he does get taken out and taken off the board by everybody's favorite villain, everybody's most Darth Vader here. Caleb, how are let's talk about him for a little bit, and let's talk about, I don't want to call the rivalry, because it really, I mean, does it even deserve that word?
Exactly.
The like squabble?
Yeah, to squabble, like what you mentioned earlier is like, how do you feel like she's trying to be like 2 steps ahead of everyone, but really realizing he's behind. Like, he was 2 steps ahead of Vader, but what you don't realize is when you're running, in a race against Vader, the moment you get ahead, that's when he will chop your knees out. Like, that's not, Vader doesn't fight fair. So at the end, when he, just like, oh, I'm just going to wait for you to be at your lowest point and then show up with my Death Star or my Mars Star Destroyers and completely annihilate your forces, that's pretty much exactly what was always going to be happening. You're right. It's less of a rivalry between Vader and Shizor. It's more of trying to play the underground against each other. Like, the moment Vader enters the field fully after being jerked around by the Emperor and finally be able to stand down and like, okay, I'm going to do things my way by myself, it's all over. We all know how that's going to end.
Jared, I'm gonna ask you a question here. We've seen Palpatine, especially in the canon material, really pull the strings when it comes to Vader and really put him in some awful, abusive sort of situations. Do you think that was a situation here? Do you think Palpatine was using Shizor to annoy Vader, or do you think that there was a legit side little agreement here that Vader actually spoiled?
I spent a lot of time thinking about this exact question, and I'm not sure I know. Like in Lords of the Sith, Palpatine is very heavy-handed in revealing it was all a part of my plan, right? But in this, he never reveals, I positioned Shizor in order to make you mad. It kind of reminds me of the episodes of The Office where Michael is leveraging Andy against Dwight. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
When Andy first joins, before he punches the wall with the whole Rockin' Robin thing, he Michael just thinks, oh, he's a try hard, kind of a likable guy, and Dwight had just done something to anger him, and so like Michael knew that he was using Andy in order to make Dwight mad, but kept doing it anyway. There were certain points in the story where it was pretty obvious that Palpatine knew that he was upsetting Vader, and he wanted to see how Vader could respond to somebody who held a lot of power but wasn't a dark side user. Certainly Vader has checked out quite a bit at this point in the story, don't you guys think? I describe it as like graduation goggles. He's got senioritis. Vader is already thinking about ruling the galaxy with Luke Skywalker, and I think Palpatine is like the jealous girlfriend trying to get trying to see if Vader is still paying attention to him, right? So what do you guys think? Freddie, do you have an opinion on this?
This is, you know what, skip me, because I've been thinking about this one a lot, and I'm not sure I actually have the question.
Well, you can talk about it tomorrow night on Legends Look Back.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
The next part of this.
Perfect.
At 9:30 tomorrow on Youtini.
One of the things I know you do have an opinion about, Freddie, is the fan cast on Dash Rendar and Prince Shizor. So I want to go around the horn here, and I want to ask, there's 6 of us. So I want to hear, let's start with Dash Rendar. If you were to fan cast both Dash Rendar and Prince Shizor, who would you put for which one? For me, my Dash Rendar is Chris Pratt. So it's like he's kind of lovable and buffoonish. He's Star-Lord, right? And so he's not Han Solo, but he wants to be, right? He kind of wants to be. Tyler, what do you think? Who's your Dash Rendar?
See, I don't again, because we're focusing on the comic, I can't cast Dash Rendar because he's not in it enough.
That's true.
He's like our smuggler number 3. In this book, because he pops in and out. So I don't necessarily know if I can cast Dash Rendar. Shizor. Oh man, come back to me on that.
Okay, Emma.
That's.
Yeah, Dash Rendar, I don't know why, and this might just be because Loki started today, but I'm thinking like a Tom Hiddleston might be good. He's got the hair, maybe not the bulk for it, but I
He
think he
could bulk
might.
up.
Yeah, he could do it justice, I think. And then Prince Shizor, I'm just trying to think of like the creepiest dude in Hollywood, and James
So
Spader comes to mind.
I just put a Google in for evil actors in Hollywood, and I ran through and I scanned through the list, and one name popped out at me. Kevin Spacey feels
Oh,
very
yeah.
very
Yeah.
appropriate
Yeah.
here, not in a good way.
no.
That's a little too on the nose. Yeah.
No,
Yeah, maybe.
that's what that's who I'm gonna go ahead and insert there.
John Knowles says he pictured Dash Rendar as more like Kevin Costner. Some of the early
Oh,
concept
interesting.
art was
That makes sense.
I can see
That
that.
tracks a lot, actually.
I like that. I like that. We're gonna go ahead. Let's go ahead and end this segment on that, because that is a perfect casting right there. And because this is a comic, I do want to spend just a few minutes on the art. Especially because I really love the art. I think all the space battles look really really cool. I think some of the splash pages that feature our heroes look amazing as well. When you get into the background, when you get into some of the secondary images in each of the panels, it gets a little muddy. But
There was
like I said,
I noticed a tendency for like when there's crashes in the background or less important characters, they're all in this weird purple hue. Like you could tell,
Yes.
oh, those guys
Mhm.
aren't important
Yeah.
because they're
Yes.
de-resing out of existence, and we're not putting as much RAM to them.
I mean, but as Jared said at the top of the show, like this is classic 90s comics. Like the explosions and the ships. I mean, the
Shoulder
subtleness in
pads.
which the shoulder pads, the subtleness in how they use the color, especially when it comes to Boba Fett or when it comes to the Falcon. It really like it pops for if I can say that about a 90s comic. But I really enjoyed. If I would recommend, this is how I would recommend, if you haven't picked up this trade paperback of these comic books, just look at it. Don't worry about reading it. Just go
Yeah.
through and enjoy the art, because the art is really really nice. Jacob, what are your thoughts on the art?
Yeah, I think it's enjoyable, and it's I think I talked about it a little bit when I read it was when I was talking about Maul Son of Dathomir. That Legends comic books just have a different look to them. I mean, that was more, the Dark Horse era look to it, and this is comic books are in a way independent of their authors or artists, are like a time capsule. You get to see that style of the era. So I enjoy seeing this 90s throwback. Just, it's very different than Dark Empire. That's its own thing. That art style is very special, and but that's very stylized. So it's cool to see this 90s era of comic books and this 90s art. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, like you said, it's one of the highlights of the comic book adaptation for me.
So before we get on to Evolution, I want to ask Emma, as somebody who has consumed all of it recently, does the comic feel like the video game? Does the video game feel like the novel? Does the novel feel like a more spread out comic book? Like if there's one piece of if you're saying throw everything out but keep one piece as the official canonized version of this story, what piece of medium would you choose?
Far and away the novel. It had just the most explanation of things. I think the best character development, the best pacing of the story. I feel like in the comics you didn't really get the whole like breadth of what the story had to offer, and the video game kind of felt like its own separate thing in a way. But that also might be because I just watched it and I didn't play it myself, so I could be totally off base on that. But yeah, far and away I would choose the novel every day of the week.
Right. And does anybody disagree with that? And if so, why are you wrong?
It might be the video game. It may be. I'm having a ton of fun. I'm stuck on IG-88 right now.
IG-88 is
with the video
awful
game.
in that game. I remember that 25 years later. I still remember how much I hated IG-88 in that game.
So if you want to see more of that game, pay attention Friday night on Youtini game nights. Andrew's gonna be playing that. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
So the other thing that I still want to spend, we're going a little long here, but that's what happens when we have 6 people and offering their opinions on one show. There was additional reading this week, and that was Shadows of the Empire Evolution, kind of a sequel, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Caleb, why don't you give us a little bit of background on this mini series?
Absolutely. Shadow of the Empire Evolution, released February from January of 1998. So what was that? A whole 2 years later. Is set post Return to Jedi. So after the big plot has been resolved. Is written by Steve Perry, who was the original author
of the novel.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
So not the adaptation, but the novel's authored. And Ron Randall was the penciler, with inkers by Tom Simmons and Ron Randall, color artist Dave Nestle, letterer Steve Dorito, and cover artist, by the way, I might say some very harsh things about this comic, but the cover art is amazing. Love all the covers, and that was by Hugh Fleming.
Absolutely.
Jared, what in I'm going to time you here. You need to give us an entire summary of this arc in 45 seconds.
Oh, dang it. I forgot I had this question.
No pressure.
It follows Guri, right? Guri.
Yes, it does.
It's like Gary, but with a U. She is the cyborg who is
also in Shadows of the Empire, but plays as big a role as we've talked about.
She is, Shizor's right-hand woman, droid.
Mm-hmm.
She is a droid with human skin and other human parts. We won't talk about that, but it's implied that she is Shizor's slave in some horrible ways, because we're talking not just about a droid now, but a droid with skin. And in this, it's like Guri Unleashed, Guri Unchained. She becomes woke. She she breaks free of Shizor's chains, and somebody help me out here. What does she do?
I got you.
Like she's
I could feel this one.
Okay.
I read this a few hours ago to brush up on it. So
Yeah, thank you, Emma.
she's her goal in this arc is she doesn't want to be an assassin anymore.
Yeah.
She goes to find like the programmer of these human
There it
replica
is.
droids, and sort of has to go on this huge mission to find the droid that has the ability to do this operation, whose name is Doc. And then the rebellion's in it somehow with Luke and Han and Leia and Chewie, because Black Sun is being started back up by Shizor's niece, who has this face mask that makes her look like
There it is.
Shizor.
Shizor's Misk. Yep.
Yeah. And
I said
that's
Misk.
Well,
Niece.
she has-
Shizor's niece.
She has 2 masks. One that makes her look kind of like Shizor, but not Shizor because she's in disguise, and then one that makes her look human.
right. And they even changed the shape of her face, which is incredible how that works. And then let's see, at the end of the comic, Guri sort of forgets everything that happened, but she still has some fighting powers. But
Lucky.
she's not an assassin anymore. Yeah, I know, she is lucky. I wish we all had that ability. And then she walks into a bar and has a drink with the one and only Dash Rendar.
Oh, not dead.
not dead.
Not dead.
No.
Spoiler
Somehow,
alert.
Dash Rendar has returned.
Yeah.
All right. So Caleb, you seem to have some strong feelings about this book. Why don't you share them?
I do not like this novel. I think it is very bad. And the reason being is I feel like the only reason they created this novel and they put this to
We're
comic
PG,
book
remember?
is because the artist really was a big fan of Guri and liked drawing sexy gynoids. Like they enjoyed making her very attractive on every single panel she's in. I feel like that's the only reason this comic exists.
It is very 90s in some of the not great ways. I think this is a better story because it actually is a complete story.
I agree with that.
To the original, and I think there's one part of a panel, if you crop that out and if you just took like a purple marker and covered up a lot of the times her outfit gets torn, it's not as bad. Like you can kind of like the amount of problematic stuff is much less. You can kind of gloss over some of it, and it's a fine story.
It's obvious it was written and illustrated in the 90s.
Yeah.
Can we just ask if everybody appreciated it? Who liked the regular Shadows of the Empire more, and who liked Evolution more? I think I preferred as a comic Evolution.
Same.
I agree with you. Yeah.
And
I think
anybody dissenting there?
I think the original was better than Evolution.
Freddie, what do you think?
I think the original tried a little too hard to follow the book, right? So you got lost in some places, and Evolution is just its own standalone thing that just kind of makes sense and it works. So yeah.
I mean, Caleb kind of touched on this a little bit. Like, both were problematic in their portrayal of women, for sure. Definitely Evolutions didn't have that like shock factor or and it wasn't certainly as bad. You could tell that the art style was sort of sexualized, I would say.
Yes.
At the same time, we get kind of a better storyline with Guri sort of breaking away from her abuser, and I like that because it gave her agency when Leia didn't, and so that's why I feel like this is much less problematic than Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah, it's like I feel like Evolution is average 90s problematic, where regular Shadows of the Empire is extra problematic.
Yes. I was gonna say it definitely felt very 90s, and I say that in all of.
We're not trying to excuse it. Yeah,
right.
It's just,
exactly.
It is what it is.
It is a fact of life that women in comics in that era were all portrayed in the same fashion. So,
as I mentioned, before the show, I was showing my wife some of these comics, and I was showing her a couple of the choice moments from Evolution. She's like, "Yeah, I can see how this is kind of gross, but this is what I expect from comics of that era." I'm like, "Yeah, that's kind of sad."
Yeah. So, I mean, there's not a whole lot to continue to dwell on that element. I do feel like the story was a little more succinct and
was
a little
complete.
And yeah, I was just want to say had a beginning and had an end. So that is definitely something that it has going for it in comparison to Shadows, because Shadows definitely feels like an epilogue. Maybe not necessarily an epilogue to Empire Strikes Back, because it definitely is its own thing, but it definitely feels like a prologue to Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, or like an interlude,
Well said.
Yes. Whereas Evolutions is very much its own standalone, and you can feel like you got a full, story by just reading that those 5. I think that was the 5 comic.
That was the 5-issue ones.
Yeah.
Yes.
So. All right, before we get to, if anybody doesn't have any of the final words on Evolutions, I'm going to toss it over to Jacob so he can wow us with his amazing Legends Inception level of Easter eggs, because we normally have Easter eggs.
Don't hype them up too much. They're not that good this time.
We normally have Easter eggs that feature Legends content, but now we're going back to the original with these books. So, Jacob, what Easter eggs do you have for us this week?
So I'm bringing my buddy Jared over here with me, because I got like 2 or 3. Because my normal process of finding Easter eggs is like see something interesting, look it up on Wikipedia, and write something about it. But like every single thing you would do that for, it'd be like, oh, this first appeared in Shadows of the Empire. So it was very difficult. I got like 2 or 3, and then Jared helped me out because God bless you. You know way more about this than I do. So I got a couple, then we'll toss over to Jared. So first we got Ringa Jixton, or Jix, who is Vader's agent. Was based on a background character, at least his look was, from the Jabba's palace scenes in Return of the Jedi. And then Big Giz, our famed swoop bike gang leader, was friends. I thought this was cool. He was friends with Nuru Kungura Rama. I butchered the crap out of this. He was the
Bravo. That was great.
Yeah.
The Chiss Jedi from the Clone Wars Secret Mission books, which I like. I just see the cover every once in a while of those. I'm like, yo, that's that book with the Chiss Jedi. I have no idea what it talks about, but it's pretty cool. I think those took. Yeah, there we go. I think it took.
He's got it ready.
Trev a very long time to track down like one of them for his collection. But yeah, he was friends with him and apparently starred in all those books. So there you go. And that is the end of the two.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, the 2 Easter eggs I found.
I've got 3. They're more behind the scenes trivia than they are Easter eggs. I'm gonna give my first one to Freddie though. Freddie, the fact of the matter is Perry invented Terras Kasi. You know, we got the video game and everything. It was even in Solo recently. He invented Terras Kasi because he was a martial artist. Freddie, you're a martial artist.
Yeah,
You know more about this than I do. What is this?
Yeah. So Perry, he was, I think he was doing several things with Terras Kasi. A couple things. So one, Terras Kasi, the moves themselves that were captured in the video game and in Star Wars Galaxies are modeled after, it's like Pencak Silat, which is an Indonesian martial art, like one of the ancient martial arts. It's been around for a long time, since like 6th century. Yeah. And then also in Finnish, which Terras Kasi, it's not exact, it's not spelled grammatically correct, but it stands for steel hands in Finnish. So
wow, that's cool. I didn't know that. I knew Freddie would have something on that, and I just saw you start typing in the show notes, which was so cool. The other 2 I've got are this: Dash's shoulder pads. They're like the most infamous thing about him.
Yes.
Poor Dash. F's in the chat for the most interesting about him is his outfit. Dash's shoulder pads were actually a crutch in the design phase for the video game, for the fact that his clunky joints look so bad on the N64. So you could see way too much movement. So like stick some big old shoulder pads on there to hide how ugly that is. And then secondly, the Outrider, maybe the most amazing thing to come out of this entire crossover event is Dash Rendar's ship, the Outrider. It was designed by none other than legendary Star Wars concept artist Doug Chang. So hats off to Doug Chang, and it's so cool. You didn't know that, Emma?
Oh, that is amazing. That's so cool. I love Doug Chang's work. So this is like, oh, so cool.
So you
look, there it is. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's
see this in the comic, and you guys are gonna have to correct me for the video game and the novel. But my toy, the toy that I had when I was a kid, that cockpit, if you, Jacob, go ahead and throw that back up on the screen. That cockpit actually rotated.
The toy is designed differently.
Okay.
It does not follow Doug Chang's art.
I'm a little disappointed because that whole arm of the cockpit rotates kind of like a B-wing, in that it is able to go up and it was able to go down, but apparently that was just to sell more toys, and it worked on me.
They got you.
They went rogue. Yeah.
I have to say,
the design of that ship is so cool. It kind of reminds me of oh gosh, we had trouble with this name a few episodes ago. I can't remember the name of the ship, but
White T-1300.
The Volt Cobra.
Yes, the Volt Cobra. Great memory. Yes.
Sonostaros' ship.
Yeah.
Sonostaros' ship. It kind of reminds me of that a little bit.
It's the other way around, though, Emma.
Oh, right.
Sonostaros' ship is derivative of this.
Yeah.
Right.
I have to say, seeing this ship show up in Rebels and then seeing Martin pop out was probably one of the most disappointing. I mean, I watched the show like 5 years after it came out, but it's like, oh my god, that's Dash Rendar's ship, and it's like, Martin. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
From Arkansas. He's from Arkansas.
Like, one thing I really liked about it is it shows that I like how you can see different versions of the YT series. Now you can open it up, so there's gonna be thousands of YT series. Like, oh, that's Han Solo's ship, but it's just made a different year model. That makes sense. I like how when in Star Wars they make things make sense in the universe.
Was it I think it was the Vader Age of Rebellion series where he like is chasing Han Solo and he like flies into the YT repair yards, and there's just like a field of YT cruisers everywhere.
Yes. Yep. All right. So we are going to go rapid fire this time. I'm going to go around the room, and if you're watching us on YouTube, where I'm literally going to go around the clock here. I'm going to ask everybody what their final score is, and if for some reason you think that there's a different medium that's better than the novel, you can say it. But again, you're going to be wrong. So I'm going to start to my left here with Jared. Jared, what's your final score on the comic version of Shadows of the Empire and Evolution? We'll combine the two of them as a score.
I gave the comic 6.9. I'm gonna bump it up to a solid 7.
Solid 7. Emma, what's your final score?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with my 5.8 for Evolution. I would give it a 6.5.
All right, so I think we're averaging then to like a 6.2 there. Okay.
Yes.
Jacob, what about you?
Original, I'll stick at a 6. Evolution, I'll go 6.5. Best medium soundtrack.
Fair. I will accept that answer. All right, Freddie, your final score for the 2 books.
I'm gonna stick with it's hard for me to separate it all out, so I'm gonna stick with a 7.2, and I'm just looking at the whole thing. Once you get the idea of it all, once you read the book, once you play the video game, you really get
the
that
trading
experience.
cards.
Get the trading cards, get the
action figures.
Reading this book at the ripe old age of 11, didn't really understand it.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah. So in my opinion, I really liked the video game. It brought back a lot of nostalgia, just listening to it and playing it and hearing the repetitive soundtrack. I was in for it. So I'm going to go with it.
Caleb, what's your final score?
I'm going to have to stick with a 6.0 for the just a 6 for Shadows of the Empire. If I have to grade Evolution, it'd be lower than that. So I'll just be generous and say 5 for Evolution.
And my original score was I believe a 6.5, and I think I have to leave it there. I mean, like I said, I really enjoy the art, and I really encourage you if you want to see some really classic 90s looking art and some really cool space battles, and I encourage you to pick up and just look through it. Like I said, the story is all over the place. I would absolutely, like a few people said in the chat, I would absolutely read the novel first. But yeah, so 6.5 for the comic, and the Evolution doesn't really change the score too much to me. I mean, maybe at 6.6. So. But all right, well, that was a very interesting conversation. Thank you for everybody for joining us. Jacob, you've got a couple of announcements for us before I wrap up the show. So when we're turned over to you, and what do you have for us?
This is the first night of a big crossover for us, the first real Youtini network crossover we've ever done. So of course, talked about the comic books today. We're talking about, well, not us, but Legends Look Back is talking about the novel tomorrow with myself and Emma. And then on Friday, I just threw in a little scuffed text there, is game night. So Andrew will play in Shadows of the Empire. Jared's going to be hopping on talking about, basically it's just going to be an hour or two for Jared to take all the thoughts he couldn't put in the previous 2 roundtables and then dump them on the game night audience. So we'll be doing that. But yeah, before we head out, I just want to thank Freddie for joining us, and also thanking Jared for joining us and putting this whole crazy crossover event together, because I certainly could not have done this, and we're really happy to be, stories aside, we're happy to be getting together as a big Youtini family.
It's been fun.
I love it. It's a good time capsule.
Yeah. Jake, Jared, I'll let you say the final word before I send off, because this was your idea, right? This was when we started this. You said when we started this comic show, this was your idea. So I want to thank you.
Don't blame me. Don't blame me for this.
No, this was a great time. This was a great time. So I want to have you send us out with any final thoughts.
Sure. Thank you to our listeners for staying up late, especially if you're on the East Coast. We got coast to coast. We got Maine to California on this episode. So we're covering a huge swath of time zones, and it's been a lot of fun getting this thing started. I've enjoyed the disagreement. I enjoyed how much Caleb disliked Evolutions. I mean, it's fun to subject you guys to this. Next time around, we can do something like Legends Vader event of some sort. But it's my dream come true to get to do this with the Youtini team.
Yes. This is a lot of fun. It is always fun when we have guests on the show, and Jared's been on here twice now. So I imagine that a third time will be right around the corner. And Freddie, I'm sure we're going to find time to bring you back as well. But for tonight, that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Cosmic Force. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and the channel, both here on YouTube, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure you tune in live right here on YouTube every Wednesday night, normally at 8 o'clock. Next week, we go back to our regular time at 8 o'clock. So join us live in the chat. We always have a good time. If you like what you hear, please leave us reviews on iTunes. It helps other people find the show, and we always appreciate all of your kind words. So be sure to visit and also be sure to visit youtini.com for reviews of these comics and the novel and all other articles and news for the entire expanded universe. We also encourage you to join our Youtini Discord at youtini.com/discord. And also, of course, if you like and want to support the show, you can join us over at patreon.com/Youtini. We want to send a special thank you to Cheryl Bell, Patrick Ortiz, and Carl Sander on our Jedi High Council, and Elizabeth Cloutier, Jason Mitchell, Freddie C., and Sally and Chris Eilerson on our Alliance High Command for their continued amazing support. You can tweet the show at Cosmic Force Show or the host individually. I'm at Ty Rags. Emma is at Irma Jedi 26. Caleb is at Caleb Lamanick. Jacob is at Jacob Bosch. Jared is at Jerry Q Mays, or why do we put the two J names next to each other? And Freddie is at Wake Up Freddie. Thanks again for all of my co-hosts tonight. Thank you, Jacob, for producing and doing another great job. Thank you for all of you in the chat, and thank you all whenever and wherever you are listening. We truly appreciate all of your support. We'll be back next week, but until then, may the Force be with you.